Well, good morning, and welcome to the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber's Technology Forecast. My name is Joe Bauman. I'm the president of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber, and on behalf of our staff and our board of directors and our ambassadors, for many of you, welcome back to the Village Club. I see a lot of familiar returning faces from our economic forecast last month, and hopefully I'll see a lot of you familiar faces next month at our real estate forecast, which is right back here on April 11th. This is the second of our third forecast series, as I mentioned, and we've got a great program this morning that I'm sure will both depress and terrorize most of us who are in business. Sorry about that, Rick, but but it's true. Before we get started, I have a couple of introductions and thank yous. First, I want to introduce our staff. Our operations manager, Kelly Bennett, who checked you in this morning. I'm not sure where Kelly is. Kelly's back there. Our events and marketing manager, Annie Burns. Annie's over there. And our member engagement manager, Aziza Zabari. Thank you, Aziza. And for those of you who've been members of the Chamber for more than a year, you probably ran into a ghost this morning. I don't know if she's checking up on us or is really bored in retirement. But we welcome back Cheryl Geralds, our recently retired operations manager. We all have to be on our best this morning because I'm sure she'll have some feedback for me after. So the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber, 6 member communities that we serve in and around Birmingham. We have approaching 700 member businesses that are part of our chamber. So we have a lot of members. And we have a relatively small team. Our motto is we're small, but we're mighty. But we couldn't do everything that we do without some real dedicated volunteers who help us plan and execute our programs, help keep our membership engaged, help keep us visible and active, and advocating every day on behalf of our business communities. Our volunteers are led by our ambassadors, who are chamber foot soldiers, who help us with registration at events, greeters, hosts, new member visits, member engagement calls, and then our board of directors that obviously sets our policy, keeps us on the right track, and hopefully not too often is responsible for hiring and firing the president. So we don't want them to exercise that opportunity too often. But we really couldn't do everything that we do without our ambassadors and our board members. So if you are a member of the ambassador team or our board, please stand and be recognized. I also want to thank our sponsors for this morning's program. Our sponsors help underwrite the cost of programs like this that help us keep them affordable and give us the opportunity to do a lot of our no-cost and low-cost programming as well on behalf of our membership. Again, they play a critical role to the overall operations of our chamber. Our diamond sponsor for this morning is Clark Hill PLC. Our platinum sponsor is the Bank of Ann Arbor. Our gold sponsor is Fenner, Mellstrom & Dooling and Consumers Energy. Our silver sponsor is McDonald Hopkins, and our bronze sponsor is Comcast Business. So thank you all to our sponsors. Our moderator for this morning's program is Jason Schwent of Clark Hill PLC. Jason is experienced in data privacy, intellectual property, and litigation. He advises both public and private clients in various industries on regulatory compliance, technology-related transactions, and proactive risk management and data policy review. In addition to being a registered patent attorney, Jason has extensive compliance experience with the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as our friend HIPAA, which we all love. Jason is a certified information privacy professional. He counsels public and private companies and their boards on corporate governance matters related to cybersecurity and data privacy, including ESG-related considerations. And Jason, I just found out this morning, made a special effort to be here this morning and flew in from St. Louis. So, Jason, we thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. And with that, I'll have Jason Schwent come in and introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Rick Synder served 2 terms as governor of Michigan from 2011 to 2018. He led an economically depressed bottom 10 state to top 10 status in 8 years. Michigan became a national and regional leader in private sector job creation and increases in per capita income. Multiple awards were won during the Synder administration in cybersecurity. National Association of State Chief Information Officers Cybersecurity Award in 2013. In 2016, the NASCIO Cybersecurity Award, and also in 2016, the CSO 50 Award. The Michigan Cyber Advisory Council was created with CIOs and CSOs, which led to the Michigan Financial Industry and Michigan Healthcare Cybersecurity Councils. These groups were created to bring public and private sector IT and security executives together across all sectors to ensure communication, coordination, and collaboration. This served as a model for other states across the country. Also, Michigan's cyber disruption response strategy was published under Governor Synder and was widely considered the national model. This strategy was the first of its kind and leveraged the Michigan Intelligence Operations Center. Today, Mr. Synder is CEO of Sensi, a sensible solution of cybersecurity for small and medium-sized companies, which is an area that I should emphasize in my experience is very, very, very important in terms of cybersecurity. The big guys, they've got their teams and their in-house resources for that. It's the small and mid-sized companies that are frequently attacked and are frequently the target for these things, and so this sort of service is very, very important. It is my pleasure to introduce former Governor Rick Synder.
Well, thanks, Jason, for that introduction. Thanks for coming back, and it's great to hear a different perspective on cybersecurity. He's helping people after they get in trouble, too. And it's great to be with you. I just noticed, I think I've got the same coat on. That was not planned, folks. And I want to thank Joe and the Chamber. Thanks for having me back. I'd been here several years ago. This is a great location, too. I've always enjoyed giving speeches here, so it's wonderful to be with you. Actually, I'm going to talk about a couple things today. Just to give you a little insight, though, it's interesting. You probably asked yourself the question, what do you do with an old governor? Right? I am a proud nerd. That's why we got all those awards for cybersecurity when I was governor. I always have been. I'm not a golfer, and what do you do with somebody that's 60-some years old? What the heck? You go do a startup, right? We've got that entrepreneurial spirit in us. Let's go and get things done. So Sensi is the creation of that with some other great partners that I had for Sensible Cyber. We're here to help small and medium-sized organizations. I have Eric joining me today, who's one of our great team members. So if you have any questions, can't get me, get Eric. But let me get started. I'm actually going to talk about more than cybersecurity because I saw this as your technology breakfast. And I will scare you on both fronts, I hate to say. But I will bring you back to life. I'll resuscitate anyone that has major issues because there is hope. But I also thought I'd talk about some of the challenges facing our world and then get into cybersecurity. Let me get started. These are some principles I've lived on and lived with for a number of years that I thought might be helpful. And I believe everyone can get access to the presentation, so don't worry about taking notes. You have all these slides because I have more information than I can talk about. But I wanted to have you have some takeaways to go with you. The first thing is, there are 2 underlying assumptions I use for everything I look at and everything I do. The first assumption is the velocity of change is only going to continue to accelerate. Think about that. If you go back 20, 30, 40 years, things moved much slower. You had time to think about things. You had time to analyze things. Now we live in an almost instantaneous world, right? Well, I can tell you, folks, it's not going to slow down. Actually, that's one of the major challenges we have in our lives today is this velocity issue. Humans were not made to address as many variables, as many issues in as short a time span as we face today. And so we need to change how we make decisions and how we look at the world to respond to that world. The second one is globalization is going to continue. And what do I mean by that? We do have challenges with parts of the globe. We have some trade issues here and there. But globalization is the idea that if something happens in one part of the world, it will show up in the other part of the world very quickly. So an idea in Asia can show up in the United States in a matter of hours, and vice versa. So you have to think about things not just competing with your neighbor down the street, but you're in a global marketplace, and you need to think about the implications of that in everything you do. The second thing is I threw out the traditional planning model 30 years ago or so, which was go do a big study and write a report. And I know some people may do that for a living, so please don't be mad at me. But the idea of doing a long-term study and an analysis and then coming up with strategic alternatives and making a decision really doesn't work well anymore in most cases, because the world would have changed. In many cases, by the time you'd complete the study, the whole variables had changed. I learned this back in the 80s. I worked in a public accounting firm that brought in new PCs. They were out of date by 2 years by the time they arrived at our desk because they had done a study. So what's my planning model? It's simple. What's a common sense vision? What's a vision of what makes sense you need to do? Secondly, don't sit around, engage, do a pilot. Go try it out. Go get real world facts, real world information, see what's really going on. And then after 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, stop and adjust. Now that you've got real world information, you've got a hypothesis you're working on, now you can see what you can really do and what needs to be done. And then you can hit the gas. Then you go for it. One of the reasons we went from bottom 50 to top 10 is I brought innovation to government, which is a really hard concept. Generally, people are risk adverse. They don't want to take a chance. One of the first messages I told our team, if everything we worked on worked, it meant we weren't doing our job because we weren't going innovative enough. Think about it. We were 50 out of 50. And I'd have people say, here's a new idea we may want to try. It's like, great, we're going to get to 47 with this kind of approach. You don't go from 50 to top 10 if you don't innovate. And that involves risk-taking and trying new things. And that's where the planning model comes in. To help with that, I call it living by multiple plans. So your first plan is plan A. But when you come up with plan A, you stop and think about it to say, what are the most likely things to go wrong? And if these things go wrong, what's my backup? What's my plan B? And what's maybe my plan C? Because one of the things, I have an expression, if you live life by plan A only, it's way too stressful. Because then you're assuming it's just going to happen as you perfectly laid out. You're going to stress yourself out. If you have a plan B, you can go into plan A with even more confidence and more conviction, knowing that if it doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to do. Now, literally, I've had it where I've gotten a D, E, or F. It gets stressful by the time you get to E or F, folks. But I encourage you to always think about plan B, contingency plan. That's what I did as a manager. People would come to me with their ideas. First, they'd come ask me what to do, and I'd throw them out of my office. Because I would say, no, you need to bring me the plan, and I'll help review the plan with you and help you be successful. But then one of the discussions we'd always have is, okay, if these things don't happen, what's your plan B, your plan C? And it really helped make them into much better leaders and managers. So think about that. Now, here's a slide with a lot. Here are 8 forces that generally we're doing a terrible job talking about as a society and a government. Here are the things that are going to be impacting our lives that we need to spend more time on having thoughtful discussions. And that's why I brought it to bear today, because if this is about a technology forecast, these are the kind of things you need to be thinking about. First, geopolitical risk. The role of government. Government is getting more interventionist. So in the old days, you could say, I'm going to run my business and government's government. You can't say that anymore. And I'm not making a value judgment to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It is a thing. In a number of cases, I can tell you I think it's too much. In some cases, though, we need more. An illustration at the federal level, in particular, even the state level, is we should have more done on privacy. If you look at all the online forces, all the stuff going on, government needs to be more involved there. So they're going to be more and less involved, generally more involved. And if you take an approach in your business to say, I don't care, I'm going to run my business, those guys are crazy, let them do whatever they want, you're at risk. You need to engage. You need to speak up. You need to put your voice to work. And you can do it through trade associations, chambers, other mechanisms. But speak up. And speak up, and I'll get to that in a positive way. Climate change. My rule is I never talk about why it's happening because you can get caught in that swamp forever. It is happening. And what do I mean by that? The volatility of weather, you can see that. The interesting part is Michigan, there is no one winning with climate change. We all need to do more. In terms of an area that's going to be less harmed is going to be Michigan. So strategically as a state, we should be thinking about how that fits in the roadmap, the positioning of things. I can tell you there's already land speculators buying land up in the UP because of what they see as climate change coming and what's going to happen in 50 years. Do you know anyone else talking about in our state to say how we should be responding, how we need to think about this? It's not happening in the way it should be. Cybersecurity, I'll get to that. Supply chain. We learned this from COVID, but it was true before. The supply chain issues are much more important than we ever imagined. And when I say supply chain, it's the whole supply chain. I'll tell you a quick story from my Gateway days. I actually ran the plant for a while, for a couple of years. One of my most favorite roles, in addition to being, I was the C-blank-O. So I had manufacturing working for me, and at the time we were building probably about 10,000 PCs a day in a plant in South Dakota. We had to stop shipping. And when you're building 10,000 PCs a day to custom order, that backs up pretty quick, folks. I was having to find semi-trailers all over the Midwest to fill up full of PCs. And we couldn't ship because we were missing one part. You know what that one part was that clogged up? These were $2,500 units. Remember how expensive they used to be? One part. I can tell you, hundreds of that part would fit on the sheet of paper. What we were missing were the FCC stickers. We couldn't legally ship the computers. The cost of all those parts were less than $1 probably. But we hadn't thought through every step of the supply chain. Think about that, folks. It makes a difference. I mean, when the automakers had the chip issue, I said, these guys are crazy. There's no reason this should have happened, and it shouldn't. I was in the chip business back in the PC business, and I could tell you how the semiconductor business worked. There wasn't any surprise to that. They just weren't used to it. They'd never thought about how important chips were. And they got caught sleeping at the switch. Demographics. This is a huge one, and this gets back to an old guy like me again. We're aging. This is facts, folks. So this is something people sort of try to ignore, but it's happening. We're all growing older. So one of the key things in my view is we need to put people like me to work more. Think about the brain power in this room that's 60 years old and older. A number of you are still going, but a lot of you are not going as hard as you could be going or would want to be going. How many people do you know said, I'm so excited, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do it at 62. And they go out and play golf for how many rounds, and after a while they go, I'm bored. We need to harness that thought power. Again, it may not be full-time employment, but think about the wisdom that could be mentors, that could be people tutoring in schools, all the different opportunities to put that massive amount of brain power, wisdom to work. I like to tell people one of the things, I'm finally old enough that hopefully it's the onset of wisdom. And what does that mean? I can share the dumb things I've done with other people so they don't have to do them. The other part is lifelong learning. One of the things I'll tell you is I believe our universities and colleges are in trouble because they have not adjusted to the world of the future. They're living in the past. If you look at some of our public universities have had 5,000, 10,000 student enrollment decreases because of demographics. It's a math thing. What's the issue? They're still thinking about their institutions for 18 to 25-year-olds. They should be thinking about their market is 10-year-olds to 100-year-olds. Lifelong learning. That's the future, folks. It's going to be more than degrees. It's going to be stackable certificates you're going to collect during your entire lifetime. My favorite case was I was up on Mackinac Island at the regional conference, and they were doing press interviews, and they brought in a photographer, one of the newspapers. And we started talking about this, and I said to the photographer, do you mind if I bring you into this conversation? And he goes, sure. I said, let's talk to this guy. I said, let me ask you. I said, you started on film, didn't you? And now you're digital. How did that go? And he goes, oh, I had to go back to school. I had to relearn everything I did to keep my career. And I said, see, he needed those certificates to keep going. And then he stopped me and he goes, Governor, it was more than that. I had to do it more than once. Not only did I go digital, but I had to learn the software to do the editing. Most of us are going to need lifelong learning. Let's not ignore it. Let's put those institutions to work doing those things. Now, a big one for me is the lack of civility. The last several years I was governor, I added this to every speech I gave. I wish I didn't have to. It's not gotten better. So the simple point I'll tell you is, what's the greatest threat to us and our nation? It's not North Korea, it's not Iran, it's not Russia, it's us. If we can't get along with ourselves, how can we maintain the status as the greatest country in the world? It's not possible, folks. We got to knock it off. We got to recognize you can call yourself a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a conservative, to the right, to the left. We're Americans. And we have to find common ground and do things. One of the things I regret, I wish I would have promoted this more, because I had this philosophy as governor. One thing I had our legislative team keep track of is what percentage of bills did I sign that had a majority of Republicans and Democrats in the House and a majority of Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. So it was bipartisan in both chambers. What percent of bills do you think I signed were truly bipartisan? It was just under 90%. Isn't that the way our country should be led? We can do it. We did it here in Michigan. Again, there were some controversial bills. That's what you may remember. But close to 90% had bipartisan support. I actually used to joke. There were a couple reps I used to keep track of that didn't vote for anything. It was kind of entertaining to watch because everybody else knew it was a good idea. But let's get back to winning together. And I'll talk more about that. Artificial intelligence, AI. The funny part is being a proud nerd, I can say I was an early adopter of talking about AI. Because even when I was back governor, my joke is if you wanted to go to a reception or a cocktail thing, all you had to do was show up and say, hey, I'm doing some really cool AI stuff. And everybody go, wow, that's really cool. They didn't even know what AI stood for, but it sounded really cool. It is arriving here now. It is here now. I will tell you, it is overhyped. There is way too much hype. Just like new phenomenons, you get too much hype at the start. But the part I'll also tell you, there's a huge amount of substance. It is going to transform our lives. Many of you, it's going to transform what you're doing. But we need to, again, do it in a smart way. Not by ignoring it, but looking at it and understanding it and putting it to work in an effective way that can improve our lives. The bad guys are using it already, and I'll talk about that in cybersecurity. There's an arms race going on in cybersecurity with AI. Bad guys and good guys are both using it. It's happening. Pandemics and the unknown. Does anyone believe COVID's the last pandemic you're going to see in your lifetime? It's not. Now let me ask you a question. We went through all of COVID. We had all the issues. We lived through all the PPE challenges, all that kind of stuff, the vaccinations. Did we actually do a good analysis in this country of an after-action report saying what should we have learned and what can we do better next time? It's terrible, folks. That's common sense, and we didn't do it. Part of the problem is Americans are ADD. We're looking at the next bone. We want to go bite and shake our heads. We got to go back and figure out, let's be smarter about what we just lived through. So there are 8 forces that we need to address, at least. Now, what about taking that first slide and the second slide? What comes out of that? The first thing I'll tell you is make informed decisions and innovate. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision. That is making a decision. It's to say, I'm just not going to deal with it, or I'm going to keep talking about it. You think, okay, I didn't make a bad decision. Well, I bet you did, if you're honest about it. Make an informed decision. Even if it doesn't turn out right, you may have to go to plan B, but you've decided the course of your life rather than letting life decide your course. Again, this is, with all these challenges, live your life. Don't have someone push your life onto you. And again, if everything you do works, you're not innovating enough. Next one, technology is digital, people are analog. And what do I mean by that? There's this idea now that everything's digital. And if you talk to accountants, engineers, we tend to think digitally. That's really cool, and it makes it nice. It's A or B. It's one answer or the other. But the thing we can't forget is it involves humans. We're humans. We're people. And I'll use an analogy I use for old folks like me. The younger folks may not get it, and I'll have to explain it. But the analogy is that old TV set we had when we were young. Technology is VHF, where you took that knob and you clicked, and it went discrete. Humans are UHF, where you had to turn that knob and back and forth until it dialed in and you finally got the station. You might have to hold up your foot and stuff like that to get the station to come in clear. People are fuzzy, and we have to understand that because we can't ask people to be digital. And that's actually good that we're analog because, again, if civility's working, that pays off. The problem now are all that bipartisan, the splits, the anger, all that, the division, people are thinking digitally. It's either them or us, which is a terrible way to look at the world, rather than saying we're all a mixing pot, right? Building trust and win-wins. I always shoot for win-win-win-win, as many wins as people involved. I always view it as if you have a win-lose, you've all lost something. Think about that. Win-wins are building relationships and building trust. Win-loses are transactions. If you have a win-lose and you're the winner, think about the loser. Are they going to want to work with you? They may have to. They're not going to like it, though. They're not going to like you. Why should they? They've lost. This is about finding common ground and winning together. I say in today's world, the big issue I have is people are fighting over what piece of the pie they have. They either figure someone's taking part of their pie away from them and they feel they've been taken advantage of, or someone feels I should get more pie and I'm going to grab it, or it has to be given to me. I'm entitled to something. If it's over a single piece of pie, nobody wins. The only way to win, I view it, is grow the pie. Grow the economy. Have more to share with everyone and try to share with people that need it the most even more. Get out of this win-lose mindset. The other one is building trust. If you want to do this, you got to build trust. And to build trust, you have to take a risk again. I always said, somebody's got to go first. Now, the interesting part is the last decade or two of my life is I've been going first because I figure I can take the shots. I can take the hits. If you go first and give trust, you may get hosed. They may take advantage of you. But you can handle it, and you move on, and you say, well, I'm not going to do business with them. It's a win-lose. If it turns out to be a win-win, they're going to give trust back to me, and then we've got something we can build on. We can move forward. We can show success and have a long-term path. And you can watch those accounts of trust build up over time. My operating philosophy, the bottom line philosophy I live, is relentless positive action. I've lived my whole life this way. I didn't have a name until I became governor. And then they sort of put me on the spot. They said, what is this thing? So I named it. And what is it? It's a philosophy of no blame, no credit. Don't worry about who's to blame for the situation. Don't worry about taking credit. What's the problem? What's the solution? And be relentless in pursuit of solutions. I learned this from the first guy I worked for, a guy named Jerry Wolf back at Cooper's and Library. He was a no credit guy. So these are life lessons you can learn, and it does work. Because then you're focused on problem solving. So these are just some things on the resilience side I thought I would share with you. So I'm going to keep going and talk about a few cyber things now. First of all, cyber, it's alien to most people. Jason's great, but if you listen to him talk about all the awards I got, it was like alphabet soup, right? It was C something, then A something, and another C, and oh my God, I can't figure this out. It's too techie, too nerdy. It's easy to ignore. It's not a top priority. The only time cybersecurity should be your very top priority is because you've gotten hacked. And then it will consume your entire life. If it's not consuming your entire life, you have more important things. You have to go sell that piece of property. You got to go take care of the family. You got to do this. You got to do that. You have more important things. I tell people I never thought I'd be so excited to work in a company. My goal is to help people sleep better at night. But it needs to be a priority. If you ignore it, you're a sitting duck. You're living on borrowed time, and most people are ignoring it, to be blunt. Because a lot of times they'll think, I'm a small fish in a big pond. They're not going to find me. The part that you don't understand is cyber criminals have figured out they love small fish. It's a lot easier and less risky for them. Go get the small folks. They don't know how to defend themselves. They're not prepared. They're not going to get all the attention of everyone else. They're not going to have the resources to respond. And you've got them. And the other part is if you get the small fish, quite often if they're in the supply chain, there you go. You got the door into the big fish. So about half of all the cyber attacks now are on small fish, small and medium-sized organizations. Every one of you is getting attacked every day, right? Those phishing email. This is what you don't want to see. This has now become a very big business. This is not a few hacktivists, a few people doing this on the side. There are entire corporations now formed in these countries where we can't get them. And you will get this slide. This is a ransomware slide, a real one. And it shows how sophisticated it is. It actually says, how do I pay? It actually has payment methods on here. Bitcoin. It actually says you get a discount if you pay early. These places have HR departments now. They actually advertise and show what their employee benefits are to hire hackers. So I hope you never see this slide. I've got a whole bunch of things on these slides. I'm only going to highlight a few. I have 2 slides where I've got basically the cyber health things we should all be doing. I would take a whole half hour to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to highlight a couple. One in particular, phishing exercises, strong passwords. You know that. A lot of people have password policies. I'll ask you this, though. Who here reuses a password? Raise your hand and be honest. The single worst idea, short of not having a password or using your name or admin, is reusing a password. Why is that? Because if you get hacked and they get that password, they've got a password then, they know you, they can run that password against all your other accounts and hack something else. A classic is for remote work, use a virtual private network. The classic was, I was actually with a group of accountants giving a talk to them about cybersecurity in a casino. I said, how many of you are on the Wi-Fi in the casino? 90% raised their hand. How many are on a virtual private network, which is a piece of software that keeps it encrypted? It creates like a safe tunnel for you to go back and forth. And I had less than 10% of the people said they were on a virtual private network. These folks were in trouble, folks. The worst places you can be on a public network would be an airport and a casino, because the bad guys know that's where to go get easy pickings. Keep your systems up to date. This is one you should all check on all your devices. And don't do it now, please. I hope you're still listening to me. Is check your phone, check your other devices. Do you have auto update on? Because there are patches, there are updates coming all the time, and you want that on. And even if you have it on and you hear about an update, don't believe it auto updated, because you have to have so much power, it has to be plugged in. It says, I'll do it tonight, and it may not do it tonight. Double check. And if it doesn't, force it to update. A favorite in terms of having an incident response plan. The classic here is, this is the plan. We do a template for our clients that they help fill out to say, who do you call first? Who do you contact? What's your communications plan? Where are your backups? All the steps you need to take. Jason will reinforce this. This is a huge deal about having an incident response plan. Only about a third of organizations have an incident response plan. If you don't have one, get one. Why do I say that? Think about that. Do you have a fire evacuation plan? Yes. In Michigan, do you have a tornado plan? If you're down south, I'd say, do you have a hurricane plan? Yes. Do you have an incident response plan? The normal answer is, huh? And then I like to ask, of those three events, what's the most likely to happen? The cyber attack. One thing we do, so this is a little marketing, but it's free. Free, no obligation. We created something called the Sensei score. It's like your credit score. It's on a 1,000-point scale. It basically will tell you your cyber health. It's based on the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the federal government's best practice framework. It takes everything from detection and protection to response and recovery. 39 questions. We'll actually guide you through it if you want, or you can do it unguided. You actually have a sheet in front of you to take it with you to go get a Sensei score. If you're any organization, nonprofit, for-profit, get a score. If your score's 800 or better, just like your credit score, you're probably in pretty good shape. If you're not 1,000, there's some more things, but you're in pretty good shape. If you're 600 to 800, it usually means you've recognized cyber and you're working on it. If you're below 600, I have 3 choices for you. Go stream Star Wars, learn the Force. Go to religious services, or talk to us or get somebody to help you, because you're living on borrowed time. Here's the distribution of scores. We've done a few hundred scores just to show you what the world looks like. The world does not look good, folks. Only 6% are above 800, 17% are above 600, almost 80% are below 600. The average score is 488. So the bad guys have a lot of territory to cover. You don't want to be in that red zone. Now, to sort of summarize this, the way I describe it is, this isn't going to get better or easier. Cyber threats are only going to increase. And they're going to get more frequent and more sophistication. It's not a top priority, but the key to being successful is having an active cybersecurity culture. It's not about buying some tech tool. You can buy technology tools to make you safer. If you want to be much safer, though, about 80 to 90% of successful hacks involve people. Again, that human thing. You have to create an active culture where everyone's got it in the back of their mind. Again, not their top priority, but they're adding that second or two, those couple seconds when they get that email to say, this just doesn't sound right. I'm going to check it out. And at Sensei, that's what we do, is we help create that wraparound culture. We're your trusted guide as your virtual cybersecurity presence, working with your own internal tools and resources. So humans are the biggest risk. We actually just got a new client because they had very expensive tools that were on the shelf. They didn't even know how to install and use them. So after they got ransomware, they said, now we need to actually do the cultural stuff right. The way I describe it to people is treat cybersecurity like diabetes. What do I mean by that? It's a chronic condition. There is no cure. But if you're a diabetic and you do insulin, diet, and exercise, you can live a good life generally. We could have diabetics sitting at some of these tables right next to you. They're living a good life just like you are because they're doing those three things. That's the way to view cybersecurity. If you do all that 2 slides full of stuff and have this active culture, you can be much safer. You won't be safe. There is no one safe. But you can be safer and you can live a good life. So that's a summary of a lot of things. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. There is a lot here. I think you got all the slides. Happy to follow up. But not only on leadership and resilience, the world's changing. Change with it. Grab it. Take charge of your life. On cybersecurity, don't ignore it. Do something and be safer. So time for questions.
Can you hear me? Good. All right. So we've got a couple questions already. We'll start with so many cyber attacks being delivered to corporate email via bogus email attachments. Is email becoming an unreliable form of communication? And if so, what will replace it as an important means of sharing information?
Yeah, email is a critically important one. So you can't say, I'm not going to use email. That's part of our lifeblood today. Just think about, you would actually get the shakes. You'd be going through withdrawal if you didn't have your email, right? Just as I said, though, and I would hope Jason would reinforce this, is take that extra time to look at those emails. If you have any questions, go hover over that address, see what it is. There are a number of steps you can take to be safer with your email. The reason I say it's not just email, now it's happening to texting. They're doing phishing on texting now. The funny part is our company, I get the joke all the time that I'm sending texts to the people that work for me. Eric's getting these. He's getting a text from Rick saying, go buy a bunch of gift cards. Any of you have that one? So they're only getting more sophisticated. Now they're going to be doing voicemail. This is what AI is going to enable them to do. You'll get a voicemail from some voice that sounds familiar, and it could be a deep fake of a voice you know, saying, please go do this.
With facial recognition and all the devices that listen to everything we say, how can we control those who are collecting very personal data about us?
Yeah, you have to be careful. That's beyond cybersecurity. That's more into privacy. But that's a concern of mine. And so you do need to be thoughtful about turning off the mic, putting the devices to the side, thinking about those. Again, when you get those cookie trackers, I decline most of them because you don't want them tracking where you're going. Some of the companies are pretty good about disabling some of that stuff automatically. That's one of the issues I think we should have legislation, either at the state or federal laws on privacy, about really outlining what these rules should be in a clearer fashion. Europe has done a much better job than the United States.
Yeah, there's currently, I think, 20 data privacy laws in 20 different states. It's an area where it's not a red or blue state issue. This is very much a common issue. It's going to be increasing. So you'll see this legislation, I think, increasing with time.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges there is, and Jason said it right, I'm a proud nerd. I would be all over this if I was governor. The problem is if you think about most legislators, are they going to understand the issue very well? It's going to take time to educate people. They're smart people. It's just not their world. So you can't just overnight say, oh, we're going to do privacy. You got to build up. You should do hearings. You should do discussions, forums, and do it the right way.
Most small companies, including many that make up the membership of the BBCC, cannot afford a cybersecurity team or blanket insurance coverage. What can they do to ward off the ever-growing threat of cyber attack?
Yeah, a lot of it is you can do things internally. Again, this is talking to your team. What we do at Sensei, though, we do it for an annual subscription. We do it for lower cost than if you did awareness training and phishing alone. We're a great value that if you tried to buy it a la carte. But there are some other people like us. There aren't many. That's one reason we started our company is we saw there's 500,000 medium and big companies that have a whole cyber industry supporting them. There are 6 million small organizations that are underserved and unserved. So there needs to be more organizations out there. So we do it. We only do cybersecurity 100% of the time. We're there to be an easy touch point to give you answers, solutions to make you safer. So again, I don't want to make it sound like a commercial, but check it out.
Yeah, one other thing is don't let perfect be the enemy of good here. There's no need for you to wait for the perfect cybersecurity plan or the perfect cybersecurity solution. You should, and you noted it, make a decision, take some action.
Yeah.
It's going to be better than taking none in this space for sure. We have seen many instances of cyber warfare conducted by powerful governments, including our own, against their political adversaries. Is the same happening in the corporate world?
I would say generally no, but I don't know for sure. So you have a category of cyber actors that are nation states and terrorist organizations. Ukraine and Russia, there are dozens of organizations, not just the countries, on each side at cyber war. Between Israel and Hamas, the same thing is transpiring. It does bleed over to the commercial world. There was a hack in a Pennsylvania water system of a piece of Israeli equipment that got hacked, and they believe it was because of the issues in the Middle East. Generally, those folk are not going after commercial enterprises in the United States. The people coming after us are these cyber criminal organizations. It's interesting, one of the great enablers that made it all happen was Bitcoin, because that's their payment methodology. Before that, there wasn't a good way to pay them, so they didn't do it. Now it's easy to get paid, and they can track Bitcoin, but they're not going to track it for the dollar amounts we're talking about. So generally, if a nation state wants to hack somebody, you're done. It's over. The good part is they're not after us. It's the bad guys, though, the criminals, that we need to worry about, and you can do something about them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Well, I don't know if that was relentlessly positive, Rick, but informative nonetheless. So again, thank you to Mr. Snyder for presenting today on a very important topic. I know that, we're a team of four, like I said. I can't tell you how many times I've told, one of the team to go and buy some gift cards or send me all of the critical financial information and our accounts and passwords. So I'm sure it's happening to all of you in the room as well. And it is something that isn't going to go away, and that is, unfortunately, as you said, it's only going to get worse. So, but we're happy to present today, and hopefully you will leave our gathering this morning with a little more knowledge about the topic than when you came in with. So thank you. I want to thank the Village Club for hosting us this morning. They do an awesome job as always. Our friends at Birmingham Bloomfield Community Television for filming today. So this whole presentation, both the video presentation will be available via our website, and also we will make the PowerPoint presentation available to all of the registrants this morning. So if you have some colleagues who weren't able to be here, you think they would benefit from the information, you can certainly share it with them as well. Also want to thank Hugh Anderson from Hugh Anderson Photography, who's taking all of our pictures. Thank you, Hugh. And in closing, I just want to, encourage all of you, if you enjoyed this morning's program, if you have people in your spheres of influence who you think would benefit from coming to programs like this and becoming engaged in the chamber, please refer them to us. And, we're almost full in membership, but we've got a room for a few more. So we'll always take more. And we always really appreciate referrals. As I mentioned, our final forecast breakfast of the year will be on April 11th, which is our real estate forecast. We'll be right back into this room, and we have a panel that will cover both residential and commercial real estate trends and topics, which obviously is very important to our communities. Again, thank you to our sponsors for this morning's program. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Rick and his team, and hopefully we'll see you all back on April 11th. Make it a great day.